This, folks, is what they call the dog days of summer. For the heat and the humidity that comes a little bit later, but for the college football fan who's waiting for conference media days and also, of course, August football camp, then maybe it's more around this time in mid to late June into July. But we're going to talk it up. Ohio State football, of course, right here at the Voice of College Football. So leave your comments, your questions, your debate topics, because you ultimately produce the show. We got Steve Hellwagon on the line from Bucknuts 247 Sports, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove, and of course Tony Gerdeman joining us from Buckeye Scoop. Is everybody got their vacations in? Everybody feeling good? Everybody looking forward to football?
Yep.
Yeah. Just got off vacation. Traveling sucks. Let me just tell you that. If I could find a way to vacation without dealing with the travel, I would be on to something.
You always have to leave the country, and that adds a special extra layer of bullcrap that, I
leave the country so I don't have to answer my phone.
Oh, okay.
I came home to 900 emails. Granted, about 750 were off of mailing lists, and 29 missed calls / voicemail / who knows what. So that's why I leave the country.
There's a downside to being popular, Kevin.
And it's not, I guess bill collectors are in love with me. I don't know. I wouldn't say that I'm all that popular.
I know one guy that's popular, and he only needs initials to go by these days. Yes, Tony. He's running a strong second at this point to you, but he's gaining steam from what we understand. JTT's in the fold. He's certainly bypassed the long and arduous wait. So we have been able to clear that. And Steve and Tony were kind enough to join me after the announcement to provide their analysis. So, Kevin, we need to hear from you. JTT's in the fold. It's only less than a month until he's got to hit the field for Ohio State. Your thoughts about the decision, whether you thought it was in the bag and going forward now?
Well, I felt pretty good about it, but you never know. Somebody who takes it into 6 months after signing period, it almost seems like whatever it is, you don't know until you know. Pretty much everybody I talked to around the situation said Ohio State, unless something crazy happens. Well, apparently something crazy didn't happen. Could he have maybe been in better shape for an immediate name, image, likeness payday up in Oregon, staying, close to where he's from? Sure. But, as I said on my own analysis show that I did poolside, you sometimes you do, you forego a little bit in the short term with the hope of making it up in the long term. And I think that being at Ohio State, the coaching he'll get under Larry Johnson, the positions that he will be put in with just the amount of talent around him, that's not denigrating Oregon one bit, but I think puts him in a better position to be able to better himself for not only his first NFL deal, but if he's, half as good as we all say he is, a second NFL deal. But it's a huge get for Ohio State. Using Steve's network's rankings, they got 5 of the top 10 guys in the class of 2021 with the addition of JTT. That's just ridiculous and unheard of. And just a 1-2 punch of JTT and Sawyer is going to be formidable for 3 years. Don't count on it for 4 years.
I can't get past Kevin poolside. We don't get that luxury of seeing Kevin poolside. Is that shirt or no shirt, Kevin?
Oh, I absolutely had a swim shirt on. No. World ain't ready for all this. No.
Steve, of course, you graced us with your thoughts the other day just after the announcement, but anything in particular beyond the obvious in regards to JTT in Columbus?
Yeah, I just think from a psychological standpoint, it's a big boost for the Buckeyes. And obviously they signed their share of national top 10, top 20, top 50 guys. But just a big psychological boost at the right time to say Ohio State is a place where you can play for a national championship and get developed and go on and play in the National Football League. They had 10 guys drafted again this past year. So, I just think that what Larry Johnson has done, and we shared some of these stats in the special that we did, impromptu special on Sunday afternoon after JT announced, he's the 13th national top 100 defensive lineman that Larry Johnson has signed in 8 years. That includes Jack Sawyer, who's also in this class. And he's the 14th national top 10 player that the Buckeyes have signed in 20 years. And I did include Quinn Ewers, the number 1 overall player in the country in next year's class in that analysis, as well as obviously Jack Sawyer this year would be in there. A ton of other guys, Emeka Buka, I think, is in there. And that goes all the way back to Ted Ginn Jr., clear back in 2004, Terrell Pryor, so many guys up and down the line over that period of time. So Chase Young, I think, was in that group and some others. So what I thought was interesting, and I won't harp on this since we did talk about it quite a bit, was of the guys who completed their eligibility at Ohio State who were on that list of national top 10 guys, most of them, when they left Ohio State, went back out as first-round NFL draft picks, or in the case of some of these people, have gone on and enjoyed 5 or 10-year NFL careers despite not being a first-round pick. Ted Ginn Jr. was, I think, a late first-round pick when he came out, many years ago, and he's lasted in the NFL over, 15 years now. But this thing's almost dummy proof. When they say you're a top 10 prospect, let's look at Noah Spence. He was the number 8 overall player in the country, I think, in 2012 from Harrisburg, PA, and he played a year and a half at Ohio State, and then kind of flamed out with some positive drug tests and was banished by the Big Ten, and ended up at Eastern Kentucky, and then now has played like 3 or 4 years in the NFL. I mean, if you're a top 10 player coming out of high school, you almost have to screw up beyond all recognition to not make it to the NFL. And Noah Spence is kind of the poster child for that. So what I'm telling you is the JT's future, Jack Sawyer's future, very, very bright, and they put themselves in the right place to maximize it.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through while Kevin and Steve are talking some of the past defensive ends who have been drafted at Oregon, and you go back to Deion Jordan, who was like the number 3 pick in the 2013 NFL draft and made $22 million in his career, of which 13 was his signing bonus, and kind of flamed out pretty quickly. And that's not something we've seen from Ohio State's first-round defensive end. So I think it's generally a pretty easy sell job for Larry Johnson when talking about career earnings. When you look at the Bosa's getting their second contract, and who knows what Chase Young's second contract is going to be. And those guys, long after they're gone from Ohio State, will continue to recruit for Ohio State just based on the contract dollars.
Absolutely. Good stuff there. And if anybody wants more on JT Tuimoloau in regards to analysis, I'm sure, go to Buckeye Grove, go to Bucknuts, go to Buckeye Scoop, of course. And also, again, our 90-minute conversation with Steve and Tony from the other day. Some really good stuff and insight into JTT, both on the field and off the field, and what it means for Ohio State in recruiting beyond what they just discussed. All right. A little less fanfare for this one, but another name to try to pronounce here. I don't know if I'm going down the right path with Kojo Antwi. Antwi. All right, I will take note. Talking about roughly a top 15 receiver in the country and top 15 player in the state of Georgia. Kevin, I will defer to you first in regards to your thoughts about Antwi.
Yeah, I think really for me the biggest surprise was just once Ohio State landed Caleb Brown, the 4-star athlete out of Chicago who was tabbed to be a receiver. I wasn't necessarily saying that Ohio State wouldn't get a 4th receiver, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be Antwi. And Antwi had been mentioned potentially to UGA, to Texas A&M, but it never really went away. The conversations were there. Maybe we just weren't listening closely enough to them. And then all of a sudden, about a week ago, it started picking up some steam, and the Sewanee, Georgia receiver, just all of the future cast and rivals, all the crystal balls in 24/7 started to flip in that direction, and it's a huge pickup because if you sit there and you look at just what Ohio State has been getting in terms of receivers, I mean they've been checking off a lot of different boxes in terms of body types and whatnot, and I think that you sit there and you see maybe like Keon Grays and Caleb Burton and Antwee, and they're all in that 6'6" range. But like Burton's 162 right now, he'll play in the 180s. Keon Grays is $170. I think you'll see Kojo Antwee play, I don't know, mid 190s if I had to guess. But it certainly provides somebody else with a different skill set. And of course, the whole situation of how's Ohio State going to keep all these guys happy? But I can assure you, it's going to be just tremendous watching the competition going in once these guys get in, and you still have the 21s and the tail end of the 20s or whatnot. Just a really big commitment. I mean, maybe got lost in terms of the 3 commitments that have happened over the last week when you throw Terrence Brooks in there as well. Rivals has him as the number 161 player overall. But I think that if you look at most programs, maybe 120 of them, I mean, Kojo would come in and probably be their top-rated recruit. And with Ohio State, when you just get caught in the gravitational pull of JTT's commitment, it's just kind of, oh, that's nice. And, and that's where Ohio State recruiting is. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think it's impressive that they went into Georgia and got a Georgia receiver because that's, Georgia does really well with their receivers, and to go get a top 100 type of guy was a boon. I think that was the guy they pretty much had targeted once they got Caleb Brown. Or is it Caleb Brown? Is that right? The last guy in?
Caleb Brown. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and once they got him, and then it seemed like all of their focus Kojo was the last guy that they had really been looking at. So I think what I like about him, he's strong, he's powerful. He's maybe only 6'1", but he's already like 190. And I tweeted out that he's reminds me of like a shooting guard who can give you power forward minutes, and that he can bully cornerbacks and he can break tackles, and he's probably the X of the class in a right wide receiver class where they don't have a standard 6'3" or 6'4" X, which I don't know that is really all that important to them now. You see guys like Garrett Wilson playing X in 2 of his 3 years at Ohio State. So you get a guy that can do a bit of everything, and that goes for Caleb Burton, Keon Grays, and Caleb Brown. It's a versatile class, even though they're all similar in stature. But what Kojo Antwee gives you, I think it's just more strength and immediate explosion. Not that the other guys don't also have the ability to go 0 to 60 immediately.
Yeah, I did our radio show on Monday with my colleague Dave Biddle on Bucknuts, and I said it's as if Brian Hartline was just sitting back and watching Larry Johnson get one of the best players overall in the country and said, I see your 5-star defensive end from the West Coast, and I raise you a 4-star wideout from the SEC country in Georgia. And it's like, these guys just go back and forth. I mean, that's all it is. And I'm joking, of course, because it's not as easy as I'm making it out to be. But they're getting 4 wide receivers in this class with Caleb Burton, Caleb Brown, Keon Grays, and Kojo Antwee. And at a time when they needed to replenish, crazy as it sounds, the numbers there, they took 3 this past year with Buka, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Jaden Ballard from Massillon. And so they needed to replenish the numbers there because they've had a couple defections with Mookie Cooper going, to Missouri, and Jamison Williams going to Alabama. They lost, obviously, doesn't sound like a couple of the upperclassmen, Gardner and Jalen Harris will be with the team this year. So not that, these guys, these 4 guys account for that because they wouldn't be on the same team together. But at any rate, they needed to replenish a few numbers here at wide receiver, and Brian Hartline's done that. And you got to like the skill set of all these guys and the ability to come in and kind of grow into the position, because you got to think of Buka and Harrison and Jackson Smith-Njigba right now are the future at that position, and Julian Fleming as well once he gets healthy. So these guys have a chance to come in, learn behind those guys who are going to be, as good as there are in college football once Olave and Wilson clear out. So, the sky's the limit, and you're going to have great quarterbacks throwing them the football. Who wouldn't want to play with the best quarterbacks in the country with Stroud and Miller, McCord, and Quinn Ewers coming in? So, again, this is just something that just perpetuates itself one after another, and there is no end in sight.
When you look at 23 shaping up with guys like Carnell Tate and some others that
definitely
just seem to be just a matter of time. And I think that you could talk to some Notre Dame people who say, oh, not so fast on Tate and some of these other guys, but I'm not betting against Brian Hartline. Are you?
Antwi, 44 catches this past season, 795 yards, 9 touchdowns, coming off a sophomore campaign of 48 catches, 679, 6 touchdowns. And Steve, when you gave that picture of those guys just kind of kicking back and the recruits coming, we know, as you mentioned, that's completely opposite as to what it really is. Recruiting is just a grind. I just can't imagine the grind that it is. We all have an idea, but we didn't have to live it. And when you would watch and listen to Urban Meyer, you could see the grind in him. You could just, he's a stern guy. He's direct. He's forceful. He's all those things and focused. And with Ryan Day, it's obviously there as well. It just comes in this package that's more understated, softer tone, but he's got to be an assassin as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Day is he's more familial. Like, I think he's more relatable to the players and the families. Maybe that's because when he shows up in their living rooms, he doesn't have this legendary, the Urban Meyer type of status. And so they can just see him more as a person than as a name. But also I think the way he treats his players is a little bit different. And the way he treats the media is a little bit different. He is softer. I think he's more, like I said, relatable. I think he's more modern. And I think all of these are things that aren't lost on recruits and their families. I know from just myself listening to Urban Meyer talk when he was at Ohio State, or you watched videos in the locker room, it seemed rehearsed or that he had said it 1,000 times. And it was just repeating what he had said before or what he had planned to say. And when you hear people talk about dealing with Ryan Day, there's none of that. It's more just natural, conversational, and I don't know if warm is the proper word, but it's more, I guess, real to them. And I don't know if you feel like you're not being sold to as much as you would maybe if Urban Meyer is talking to you.
Steve asked for questions, and here they come. Sue, thank you so much for watching. Sue's always here. Appreciate you supporting us, Sue. Will Julian Fleming, staying in the wide receiver path here, be at full strength this season? Whoever wants to take that one on first.
I think they're very hopeful that that's going to be the case, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there was a shoulder issue back to his high school career, and then maybe even a knee issue that kind of popped up a little bit for him. And by the end of the spring, they had pretty much all but shut him down. He didn't play in the spring game this past year. There was no reason for him to do that if he's trying to get healthy. So that's my inclination on him. I do believe he's going to be as close to full go or healthy as he can be. Again, I think the good news is they've got a top 3 that's pretty good at wide receiver with Wilson, Olave, and Smith-Njigba that will take most of the reps. And then you've got Harrison and Agbuka who look game ready. I mean, they're ready to go out there and play against cornerbacks who are juniors and seniors and beat them is what it looked like to me in the spring. So, if Fleming comes along slowly and doesn't have that big of a year this year, and the rest of them produce at a high level, I can live with that. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And, he's going to be fine when the time comes. And I have no doubt they're going to get the best football they can get out of Julian Fleming. And when they need him, he'll be there for them. So I'm a big believer in him. He's a solid kid, straight up, through and through, and a great player. Just got to get healthy, and that's the way it is. I think he's understanding of the situation. I think Hartline and Ryan Day are understanding of the situation, and they're going to bring him along on his pace and have him ready when the time's right. And anything they can get out of him this year with those other 5 guys is going to be tremendous, in my opinion. So, you worry about it to a point, but I think just time is what he needs to get fully healthy.
Yeah, when it comes to an injury, what we're saying here, first week of July is one thing. Once he sits there and goes through maybe some more rigorous work, you don't know how he's going to respond. I mean, and that's not a matter of how he wants to respond. It's how his body responds. You're not in control of those types of situations. Plus, and I've said it time and time again on the show here, there's a mental aspect to an injury as well. I mean, especially something that has kind of cost you a couple of years. I mean, cost him last year, and something he was dealing with at least for part of high school. You have to kind of get past some of those stumbling blocks. So, I mean, from just a selfish team standpoint, yeah, they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine at wide receiver. There's not a reason to be concerned there. From a much more dialed-in Julian Fleming standpoint, I think it's just going to be a matter of time will tell there, but we've had the opportunity to be around the Ohio State campus when some, just player-only work was going on, and may or may not have heard that Julian Fleming was out there catching passes and looking okay and seemed to be in good spirits. So, kind of take that for what it's worth. But, my expectation is he fully wants to be back, and it's just going to be a matter of his body's going to be able to respond. But I wouldn't bet against it.
Yeah, I think the fact that he could play while he was injured says a lot about him and his want to be out there. Hartline seemed to be pretty confident that they'd get him cleaned up and he would be fine. I go back to the Northwestern game last year, the Big Ten championship game. He started for Chris Olave and he had 3 catches on the first drive and looked very, very comfortable and very effective. And then I think Justin Fields hurt his hand in the passing game, went bunk after that. But a confident guy that maybe had some confidence slip based on the injury and not getting as much time as he wanted. And, being the guy behind Chris Olave makes it tough. That he doesn't leave the field much, Chris Olave. So there's going to be some issues just getting snaps. But I think while everybody can talk about Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison and the 2022 class and all of this, like, don't forget that Julian Fleming was the number 1 player in the 2020 class, and he's still he still has all of the skill set that people liked back then, and people should still be excited about him. And I go back to Terry McLaurin and Paris Campbell. Terry McLaurin didn't get his first catch as an Ohio State Buckeye until his 3rd year on campus. Same with Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell even started as a redshirt freshman and still didn't get any catches. And he had to drop against Virginia Tech in 2015. So, just because it doesn't happen immediately like it did for Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave, and really it didn't happen immediately for Chris Olave either. It still took him a half a season. So having a little bit of patience for these 5-star guys, I think is perfectly acceptable. I'm expecting decent things from Julian Fleming this year, some plays, and then obviously more next year once Chris Olave is out of the way.
Yep, agree with all of that. And, as we talked about, I just think that Fleming's got a chance, just a matter of him getting healthy. And if you're not excited to see what Olave, Wilson, Smith-Njigba, Harrison, Egbuka do this season, then I can't help you. You're not a true Buckeye fan. It's going to be an aerial circus, I predict. And Jeremy Ruckert will be there to fill in around the edges as well. And every time he catches one, Kevin, what am I going to hear from my left or my right?
That's one Jardo.
That's one Jardo. That's our little inside joke.
We'll leave it at that. Unless, hey, we want to unveil inside jokes and they're no longer
and they wouldn't be inside
jokes.
Those are outside jokes.
Is that like your outside voice?
Oh, wow. We digress. Buckeye Talk here. We actually talk Ohio State football here every Wednesday. Back to our normal time, 2 o'clock Eastern time. Steve Hellwagon Bucknuts, Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove, and also Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop. These three give us tremendous insight, information, knowledge, experience, the whole deal for even more than an hour that you see right here each and every week. So please keep that under consideration. The super chat's available, folks. We've got the questions coming in from the Rod Farva. Man, I got to blow up the screen. Here we go. What's the latest on Peo na Oteote? How'd I do, Kevin?
Okay.
We know who you're talking about.
Exactly.
Again, just EA works. EA
works. Yeah, if I haven't said a name for 3 weeks, it's out of my head. I don't remember how to say it. All I've seen is that he's enrolled at Ohio State, but haven't heard anything else in regards to being eligible to play this season, Kevin.
Basically, the understanding that I think many of us have been led to believe is while enrolled, he got into the portal before the waiver was put in place, and he's having to go through the old process. And, the NC2A is too busy trying to kick the NIL can down the road or whatnot, and hasn't probably gotten around to looking at something that it thought that it had done away with when it just granted the one-time transfer. So EA is in a little bit of limbo right now, but I doubt he comes out here without feeling supremely confident that it'll be taken care of. We did see some pictures on social media of him in the linebacker group hanging out with them. So, that's kind of where we're sitting at. I still have a EA to Ohio State story that is in mothballs right now that I've not been able to run. Probably won't be able to run it in its current iteration at this point, but we just wait.
I think mine was originally written in January.
You win.
Yeah, it's just the slow-moving hands of justice, I guess, at this point. I don't know. Who knows what the holdup is? They had him on social media with all the Ohio State linebackers and Al Washington at Top Golf the other day. So, that seems to be a done deal. And I know one of the things we were going to talk about was another guy in some of those photos was Steele Chambers, the converted running back who Ohio State fans have clamored for, months and months and months. Move him to linebacker. He's never going to play at running back. And looks like they finally got their wish. But it is good that those two guys seem to be in the fold at the linebacker group at Ohio State.
Take it away, Steve. Steele Chambers officially the linebacker. Is he going to get some playing time in that rotation?
It's hard to say. When you move over there, I mean, you haven't trained there. It's rare in my experience to see guys, go from offense to defense and make much of a impression. He's going to make more there than he probably was going to make at running back. At running back, I mean, he's mired behind so many guys: Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, Master Teague, Marcus Crowley, Evan Pryor. You could argue all five of them are ahead of Steele Chambers at running back, or at best he's fourth or fifth on that list. So you just don't know. I'm looking to see here, Steele Chambers, 6'1", 220. So he's got linebacker size and good speed, and still's got several years of eligibility remaining. So I am interested to see how he takes to playing defense. And again, another position where they need warm bodies. I mean, they just haven't recruited well at that position in recent years, notwithstanding CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers, who are 2022 verbal commitments, who will be high school seniors this coming year. They're the two highest rated linebackers Ohio State signed in many, many years, maybe back to Jerome Baker and Raekwon McMillan. I don't even know. I'm not sure. But at any rate, good that they're getting some star power in there and putting a Band-Aid on the position in the meantime, in my opinion.
it's interesting that you bring up Jerome Baker because he was also a linebacker and running back in high school, was I think all-state running back as well as an all-state linebacker, and Steele Chambers was an all-state linebacker and all-state athlete in Georgia. So it's not like he's unfamiliar to this, and this was something that had always been talked about from the time he committed, that he could end up at either spot, and he had offers from Alabama and places like that, big-time offers for his unique skill set. And so you look and you figure he's at best number 5 in the running back depth chart. And you look in the spring, and I believe there are 5 healthy scholarship linebackers total for 2 spots. And so just by the math, you would think there would be an easier path for playing time at linebacker. The good news is technically he still has 4 years of eligibility because he was a redshirt freshman last year, and we know they get a free year. So if he wants to use this year as a developmental year and then move forward from there, I don't know how much he's going to play this year because you've got the seniors, you've got how often are they even going to play 3 linebackers this year? I don't know if that's much of a plan. And so you've got 3-4 seniors now with Palaie now with Teote, assuming he's going to be leaving after this year. So 4 seniors you've got to wade through, and all in just 2 positions, and you've got other guys with more experience than you, like Tommy Eichenberg in there, and so he's got some guys ahead of him. But I don't think this is a 2021 move. This is a 2022, 23, 24 type of move, and it was just never going to happen at running back. Even though he averaged 7.9 yards for his career, they're just recruiting too well there, and when they settle for somebody, it ends up being Mayan Williams. So
Right, exactly. And part of the reason that Ohio State won out in the Steele Chambers sweepstakes was because Ohio State recruited him as a running back. Others saw him as a linebacker. Even at that point, I know I wasn't the only one. I said he's probably better suited for defense, but then again, what do I know? But at this point, it seems like that's where it's going to be. I agree with everything Steve and Tony said. He certainly was behind some dudes at running back, and it wasn't going to get any easier with Trevion Henderson and Evan Pryor. Dallin Hayden, who's committed now, it's just going to get deeper and deeper over there. Use this as a developmental year, as Tony said, get reacclimated with playing defense and see where the chips may fall at that point, especially once you get past the Gant, Pope, Mitchell grouping. And then at that point, you sit there and see if you can, compete with guys like Cody Simon, Mitchell Melton, that class, Tommy Eichenberg, before CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers and whoever the third linebacker in the class may be come in. And if they live up to billing, we could be talking about this in another 14 months and be like, well, now where are they going to put Steele Chambers? Because it's difficult when you're recruiting this well. It's if opportunity doesn't knock often, some guys that may knock once, some guys that may never knock. And, Steele's a great kid. I hope he gets his opportunity, but it seems like it's going to be on defense if it's going to happen. He's
just a unique athlete that modern day defenses need more of those types, but it's just a matter of can he handle it. I am looking forward to seeing him maybe on kickoff coverage this year and seeing what he can do running down on coverage to, stop fair catches.
We talk Buckeyes with you each and every Wednesday, 2:00 Eastern time, but please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live, because we've got to adjust the schedule from time to time, but typically Wednesday, 2 Eastern time, with about 115 on the line. So the deal is that these guys are on the hook. You ask your comments and questions, they got to respond to them. I get the benefit of just responding to whatever I want to. They're on the hook for all the stuff. I just chime in whenever I want. I guess that's part of the benefit of owning the channel, I guess. But they're the experts. They're in the 100% tile of Ohio State football knowledge. I'm more in the 50% range. So we want to hear from them. I chime in when I got something to say. So we got the Rod Farva here on Jaheim Singletary, who, of course, is committed to the Buckeyes. A lot of noise coming out of Florida and Miami camps concerning his possible flip. And as you guys have mentioned many times, hey, when the commitment's coming from Florida or down south especially, but other places as well, of course, you got to recruit to the end and stay on top of that commitment, Kevin?
Yeah, the Miami fan certainly is feeling that way because if you look at the stadium, there's generally about a fan there. So, all joking aside, they're going to have to recruit Singletary until the very end. But I don't think that was ever going to be not part of the equation. I mean, you're not, he's a Jacksonville kid, so it's not necessarily, one of those South Florida recruitments that you have to hang on for dear life. But 2020 certainly created a lot of interesting situations when it comes to guys committing to schools sight unseen. He has taken his official to Ohio State. There were reports out there that things seemed to go well, but Jaheim hasn't necessarily been talking to anybody. So, you can only take what you have through back channels at this point. I think that UGA, Miami, some schools like that as they should, are going to fight until the very end. I don't know if Singletary is number one on my list of guys to be concerned about potentially maybe getting cold feet come the end, but he might be number two. But, at this point, I think things are still moving well, and until I hear otherwise, I expect him to sign with Ohio State, but you just never know.
Yeah, and the critical thing about him is he's a great cornerback prospect in the 2022 class. And as we kind of alluded to with linebacker, they haven't recruited particularly well at cornerback. They got, I think, Ja'Kalen Johnson, I think, was a big-time guy this past year, but they haven't had a big-time cornerback recruit sign with Ohio State in several years. So this guy's top 50, top 75, whatever he is, he would give him some star power again at that position, a big corner, a lockdown corner that they have not had. So at least the last year or two. So, Okuda was, Sean Wade was supposed to be, but, Seven Banks, we'll see. So, yeah, he's an important recruit in the 2022 class. They can't afford to let him go. I mean, they've got to do everything they can to hang on to him. And I think Kerry Combs and Matt Barnes and Ryan Day will do everything they can.
JTT is the next Cam Hayward.
I mean, it's an interesting comparison.
Is it? I don't see that.
Well, they're just both big dudes who a lot of people think will end up inside. I remember when Cam Hayward ended up at Ohio State, there's no way you're going to have like this 6'6", 275-pound dude play defensive end, and he started there as a freshman. So I think that just the size-wise, and I think 24/7's own breakdown has him listed as comparing him to Cam Hayward. So I'm not sure if that's where Yakov is getting it, but he's not the only one that has said that. And they're both big dudes that excel on the edge. We'll see if he can do it in college.
Yeah, it's a little early for me to do any comparisons. I mean, you watch his tape, but granted, he's playing Washington State competition, and obviously Ohio State has not been shy recruiting Washington State, getting G. Scott Jr. and getting Emeka Egbuka, and obviously now getting JTT. So, you can't sit there and be like, well, Ohio State's getting these studs and be like, oh, but Washington State football, that ain't no good. It's good. I mean, but, you sit there and you watch them coming off the edge and just doing all these things, and it's hard not to sit there and see him playing some end and whatnot, but you also look at the body type and you could see him playing some 3-tech. So, I think it's going to be a matter of how does he respond to a collegiate weight program? His body is going to determine a lot about what his future is going to be as well. I just don't want to see a Rob Rose situation where I'm seeing, a biscuit shy of 3 bills out there at end. That was kind of, whenever I see guys trying to slide out to the end that probably should be inside, Rob Rose is kind of the poster child for that. And, while he certainly filled out a jersey quite nicely, probably miscast a little bit there.
Jim Tressel had Jonathan Hankins play a few snaps of defensive end. That was fun to watch.
Yeah, I think JT's going to be just fine once he gets settled in. And again, I mean, you've got Zach Harrison and Tyreek Smith, who figure to be the starters. Tyler Friday, Javonte Jean-Baptiste also should play. Jack Sawyer's in the rotation. Maybe Noah Potter, although he could play inside as well. and then JT Tuimoloau. So I am of the opinion he's going to get, maybe 20, 25 snaps a game to start out with and see how he does and ramp him up from there. The best players play, and Larry Johnson isn't going to hold somebody back. If they can be a difference maker, he's going to play them. So it's on him to come in and be ready to go when the time begins. So I'm interested to see how they manage this position group, and if he does even get a few snaps inside this year, if that even happens. So maybe in a rush man package where they're trying to get as much speed and playmaking ability and not just plug in that middle gap, maybe in a third and long situation, move him inside where he can be a disruptor coming up the middle, and where there's no threat that they're going to try to run the ball over his gap and just go get the quarterback. So, who are you going to block in this scenario? It's going to be real interesting, I think.
I agree with Steve 1,000% right there. You put him inside on that rush man situation, see ball, get ball. Coming in from the inside, he's not going to have any contain responsibilities. It's just very much instinctual football at that point. I think that's somewhere that we could see him a good amount if he comes in here in July, goes through August, and really picks things up and shows that this off-season conditioning and everything he's doing doesn't have him too far behind. I think that is probably the most likely immediate path to some legitimate playing time. But I agree with Steve that he could ramp himself up to 20, 25 snaps a game pretty quickly if he responds well.
I'm going to be interested to see how quickly he is able to move past Jacoby Cowan, Darian Henry-Young, Cormonte Hamilton, those guys who are outside of the top four, and Jack Sawyer that we don't often talk about or don't ever talk about, and see how quickly he can bypass them in practice. I don't know how many practices we'll get to see. Generally in the fall, it's absolutely nothing. Although now, like Ryan Day might try to be, he's being more friendly to the media as we're coming out of the pandemic, and plus being friendly to the media helps the players able to sell their images or make themselves known better, helps their NIL. And so I wonder if there's maybe some friendliness going on that we'll be able to see more of practice this fall and watch this progression of JTT as he moves. Because I can almost guarantee that unless he does really well in the workouts, like when they're warming up in the first practice, he's going to be the last guy among the defensive ends. And he's going to be doing the last reps. And how quickly will he move his way up the depth chart each day? And for me, that would be fun to watch. I don't know that we will actually get to watch any of that, though.
Yakov, thank you so much for the question and contribution. The Rod Farva, you're exactly right. We've got 118 on the line. At last count for you, 18 likes. So here's the deal with the likes, folks. They're not to make me feel good or anybody here. I really could care less how many likes there are, except YouTube cares. It ties into the algorithms. You get a lot of comments. You get a lot of feedback. You get feedback through the likes, and they suggest the video out there. So the video views, the duration of time spent watching, the likes, the comments, it all contributes to getting us in the suggested video category to blow up the show. And the other way we blow up the show is have you talk about it. Go out there on social media, let people know that we're here talking Ohio State football every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And that Steve, Kevin, and Tony are here to answer your questions. So let's take a brief opportunity here to catch up with each one of them and what they're involved in and how you can follow them. Steve.
Yes, bucknuts.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, is where we're at, and trying to do our best to stay on top of all the recruiting activities, football and basketball, that are going on right now in this busy time period. And obviously the football season will be ramping up very soon. We've got Big Ten meetings in 2 weeks from right now. And we're just looking forward to getting it going. That's about all we can really say at this point. So, the traffic that I think all of our sites, excuse me, have enjoyed here in the middle of the summer with this flurry of recruiting activity has been really something to see. And, I think people are they've been hibernating for a while and they've been busy with everything else that's going on, but I think they are ready for a real true scarlet college football season this fall. So I think people are keyed up and ready to go.
Tony.
Yeah, you can find me at BuckeyeScoop.com or on Twitter at Tony Gerdeman. Podcast is the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. And I could go for a JTT every year. Take us into July because it has been, it's been fascinating. And it almost seems like people would get sick of it, but just based on the numbers, anytime you do a video or a podcast about it, because there's always something to talk about, even as there's nothing going on, people were very, very interested in this. And it's been a much different summer than last year. Both were more hectic than normal summers. This one I would much prefer happen next year as well, as opposed to the 2020 summer.
You can find me over at BuckeyeGrove.com or on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. As we were joking about at the start of the video, I just got off vacation, so I'm just starting to get my feet wet back here in the work grind. We're currently running a couple of series right now. We're doing one called Those That Got Away, which people thought I was foaming the runway in case they missed out on JTT. But looking back at a couple of commits that went elsewhere, all the way back to, I believe I started the series with the class of 2006, and we'll take it all the way to 2020. It'll end this Sunday. We ran a 2015 today, and I talked about Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Drew Richmond, and Porter Gustin. And then we're also doing an NFL draft class snapshot where we're talking about what their recruiting rankings were and some things of that nature. So bringing up some old names there as well. So, check it all out at BuckeyeGrove.com. And, of course, you can always see me, as I said, on Twitter, where maybe about 1/5 of what I post on there is actually about football.
Kevin, you mentioned old names from the past. I saw last week that Antonio Hall's kid had committed to Kentucky. Antonio Hall being a very infamous Ohio prospect, the class of 2000, who you're muted there, Steve.
I want to say 98 or 99. He was a big deal. And what's in the news is he's the athletic director, I believe, at McKinley, and took over as the head football coach after the incident where the coaches made one of the players eat a pizza while the other kids were running, and it had pepperoni on it. Was against his religious beliefs, I guess, to eat pepperoni or pork or meat or whatever it was, and they blew out the entire coaching staff. And now one of their top players who is committed, I forget the school, a linebacker, I didn't recognize the name, but he's committed to a Power 5 school, is leaving McKinley. And this is a guy who placed in the state track meet, the state wrestling meet, and is their best football player, is leaving the school, he said, because, quote, it's all fallen apart over there at McKinley, and he doesn't want to be a part of it without, he liked the coaches that were there. Unfortunate situation, and they should not have done. Should I have not done that, as George Costanza once famously said on Seinfeld? Was that wrong? Should I have not done that? Yes, that was wrong, and you shouldn't have done it. But those guys paid for it with their jobs, and they'll probably have a hard time getting another job in education or coaching after that for at least a year or two. Interesting situation at Camp McKinley, one of the top football programs in the state of Ohio, in a bit of disarray. And, Antonio Hall, unfortunately, is right in the middle of it. And Kevin had the name here, Manny Powell, who a linebacker committed to Arkansas, one of their best athletes at the school, is leaving McKinley.
I saw that this week. I was talking to an Arkansas guy, and I was skimming the Arkansas commits, and I went, Camp McKinley, Arkansas. Wow. That's an odd one.
It's the NIL
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah.
Walmart's down there.
When I think of NIL, I think about Little Rock or whatever they serve, wherever it is. So Fayetteville. Yeah. Fayetteville, Little Rock. I don't know. Do they still play the LSU Arkansas game in Little Rock every now and then? I don't know.
I
believe
don't
so.
think so.
No, they don't.
I don't know. I about the extent of, I try to watch Alabama as much as I can, just because you have to kind of keep up on the team that the path may lead to, and then generally if there's a CBS game that doesn't interfere with the 9-10 hours on a Saturday that we're at the stadium, I'll try and watch that. So I can't say that I remember watching an Arkansas game probably for about a decade.
Well, LSU Arkansas.
Ryan
that
Mallett
used to
still
be
the starting quarterback.
Ryan Mallett. Bert Beelzebub.
Yeah.
LSU Arkansas was always the Friday game after
Yes.
Thanksgiving. But
Yeah.
Missouri joined the league, and now they pinned Missouri and Arkansas and try to put those two together as rivals. And that also caused one of the great things that I like to get on with scheduling is these ridiculous pairs that they put together, these conferences, and those moves have produced South Carolina and Texas A&M as rivals in the SEC. South Carolina and Texas A&M. Check about two schools that have as little to do with each other as any two you could put together. They have to play every year.
Disparate.
All right. Anyway, and that story, I can't get over that story about that coaching staff, Steve. You know, when you hear about people who are exposed or fired over like mastermind, sinister type acts that are unethical, okay, I don't like that. I'm against it, but I understand it. But just being flat out ridiculously idiotic is, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. The
Unfortunate.
Rod Farva here. Lathan Ransom. Is there a possibility he moves to cornerback or stays at safety?
No, I think he stays at the cover safety, which is the slot safety right now. He's battling Marcus Williamson for that job. I could see him moving to free safety after Josh Proctor leaves next year, depending on what they get out of Jansen Dunn and Bryson Shaw behind him. But yeah, that's not one I've heard about. There's that would be I don't want to say desperation move, but it would be a bad sign if they have to move him to corner because they've got young guys there as well, and that would be a sign that maybe Cam Brown isn't doing as well as people had hoped with his recovery.
Yeah, it seems like a major panic move if you were to move him there at this point. I mean, Ransom has already shown what he's able to do with safety. And I mean, why would you take somebody who seems to be doing pretty well in his position to move him to a non-natural position and then potentially, I mean, maybe you're bettering what you have at corner if you're not sold on what you have at corner a little bit there, but you're weakening yourself at safety where you're having him vacate. You know, I don't like the sound of it, but once again, they don't consult me. But just from the surface, it doesn't seem to be anything that I've heard anything about.
Mark, you're on mute.
Oh, yes, I am. That was the first time this week, at least. Steve still got me beat. All right. We will have Phil Steele on here next Thursday, everyone. So please be on alert for that conversation with Phil Steele. And leads me to this final note here. Steve was reviewing the Phil Steele magazine, has an article posted. So as it relates to the Buckeyes, Steve, your thoughts about what Phil Steele has?
Yeah, very interesting analysis, I thought, by Phil Steele, and good by Tony to have it handy dandy right there. On his power poll, which is where he tells you this is the ranking of the strength of these teams, he has Ohio State at number 5. And you'd say, well, that's not in the playoff. But just scroll back a couple of pages, and in his real top 40, he has Ohio State number 3, and you scratch your head. Why is that? Well, it's because Ohio State's schedule is about as bad as it could possibly be among the playoff contenders. I mean, you look at those West crossover games with Minnesota, Nebraska, and whoever the other one is that's escaping my mind right now. And nobody can even think of it. It's that bad. I don't even know. Purdue. Illinois.
Purdue.
Purdue. Do they play Purdue this year? Do they really play Purdue?
It's a revenge
God.
game, Steve.
Purdue,
Get
right?
with it.
They play Purdue on November 13th. Oh, my God. Any rate, so that's why he's got Ohio State at number 3 in his top 40. He sees them making the playoff because they're going to dominate the schedule that they're playing. His top 5 is interesting of his power poll. I'll flip back to it if I can find it here. Let's see. The power poll. He has the most accurate preseason magazine of the last 23 years. Just ask him based on his own way of ranking the teams. Man, I'm having a hard time finding this.
Page 47.
Page 47. I should have had this all queued up. Yeah, his top 40, Oklahoma is number 1, Alabama number 2, Ohio State 3, and Clemson 4. So if you go by that, Oklahoma and Clemson would play in one of the semifinal games, and Alabama and Ohio State would play in the other. And Georgia at number 5 would be probably the next team left out. Figure, they would lose to Alabama in the conference championship game. His power poll, he actually has Alabama number 1, Oklahoma 2, Clemson 3, and Georgia 4. So he's basically admitting Georgia's better than Ohio State, but because Georgia's going to lose a game and Ohio State probably won't, Georgia will be the one on the outside looking in. And again, this is all – you have to take all this with a grain of salt. I mean, Oklahoma number 1, Spencer Rattler is his presumed pick to win the Heisman Trophy. He's going to put up some huge numbers, and if they can improve themselves defensively with the guy who was a cast off from OSU a couple years ago, then so be it. But I don't know.
Put up big numbers. Their defense sucks.
Yeah, better put up 70. It's really funny. One of my best friends, who's a coach, a high school coach, saw a tweet from the Big 12 commissioner that some big things are in the offing for the Big 12 conference, and without even batting an eye, he quote tweeted and said, "Maybe some defense?" ?
Yeah, big scores, 70-68. I mean,
maybe some defense. Whatever. So.
Oklahoma's schedule is pretty bad too. They're off non-conferences: Tulane, Western Carolina, and Nebraska, and they go to the end of the season before they play Iowa State and Oklahoma State. So, when you have to probably beat Iowa State twice in order to win the conference, or I guess only have to beat them once. You just have to beat them in the championship game, and that's pretty much all you do. You never have to go to Austin. You never have to play your biggest rival on the road. So that's a pretty soft schedule too. Their road games are Tulane, Kansas State, Kansas, Baylor, Oklahoma State. You never know what Oklahoma State's going to get, but I think Oklahoma's in the playoffs this year. I agree.
Do you know?
They'll lose to K-State again. They stub their toe all the time. For whatever reason, they just sit there and they think that they can cruise control through one of those games, and 409-year-old Bill Snyder will come out in his rascal and will whip their candy butts. No.
Do you know what's crazy is some Texas fan got into my Twitter mentions here about something I posted or about the recruiting rankings and how, they're going to, lose this again or whatever. And the Ohio State fans just savaged the guy. And here's the thing. I know that Tom Herman is not the coach there at Texas anymore, but for the life of me, without looking it up, I have no idea who the head coach at Texas is. Like, they've gone through 7 coaches in 12 years. I have no idea. Who is the new coach?
You should be familiar with his offensive style, Steve.
I can't. No clue.
He was the Alabama offensive coordinator last year.
Oh, Sarkisian?
Yes.
Oh, for God's sake. Didn't USC try that? Come on, man. What the
Washington.
heck?
Well, I was going to say, he'll have some guys, but, they'll be about akin to the Alabama, low second team. And that's not, Bijan Robinson is a national type of player, but he's not going to have the type of toys there that he had at Alabama to control and move around the chessboard. So it's not going to be an immediate type of thing. And yeah, you're right. We've seen this. it's going to take a situation of where he's going to need Joe Burrow and Joe Brady, the way that they were able to bring back Ed Orgeron's career for 1 year, and then you take both of them away, and now it's a middling proposition. I'm not bullish on Sark working out in Austin.
Well, and here's the other thing. If Ohio State even sniffs around a kid in Texas, he comes to Ohio State now. And let's see, this kid, I asked Bill Kurlick, who's our recruiting guy last night, who's the next guy to commit to Ohio State? And he gave me two names, McClellan, a defensive tackle, I think, from Oklahoma.
Wassa, or Proctor.
And then the other kid is this kid from Humble, Texas, an offensive lineman, Cam Dewberry, who's number 101 in the composite. And again, that's what triggered in my mind. Why isn't Texas recruiting this kid? How are all these kids from Texas and Oklahoma in that footprint leaving that footprint and playing at Ohio State? And they're getting 3 guys a year out of Texas now. And not only that, they're getting like the best 3 guys out of Texas. It's like they go in there and just get whoever they want. And like, who's the coach at Texas? I mean, is there a
Sarkisian?
Is there a coach at Texas A&M?
It's not Sarkisian.
At TCU, they don't need the top guys. You
guys realize when you leave these comments, I got to clean all this up. I'm going to get.
I mean, who's the coach at Texas? Who is it? I don't even know who it is.
Sarkisian.
SMU just got a 5-star guy this week.
I mean,
and they just picked up another big guy too, but Oklahoma is at least getting theirs. I mean, I think that Oklahoma recruiting and Texas recruiting are a little bit different.
Different things. Yeah.
Oklahoma is getting theirs. Texas, I think there's still kind of a wait and see thing. Credit to the Horns. They went out. They don't get Quinn Ewers. They get Malik Murphy. I think Malik Murphy is going to be a pretty good fit. And it's been a minute since Texas has been able to trot out a quarterback that I think that fits what it is that I think they're going to want to do. They've been able to go in, and they have beat Ohio State in some head-to-heads there. Dewberry grew up as an Ohio State fan while living in the Houston suburbs down there in Humble. I like Ohio State's chances there, but you just don't know in that instance. And then McClellan, I certainly think Ohio State does land McClellan. He was a little bit of a late riser. Oklahoma State both got involved, but I think that the Buckeyes have just kind of maintained through there. And that's one of the advantages you have recruiting out of state, because you can offer and not have a kid immediately jump on it. It's why people sometimes freak out that why Ohio State hasn't gotten involved with this Ohio kid or that Ohio kid. If they offer and the kid says, all right, I'm in, and Ohio State can't say, oh, no, we're not ready for you, because not only does that screw things up with that kid, but it does with that community, that high school, and potentially more. So sometimes you are a little hamstrung when it comes to recruiting your own footprint for that reason, and why somebody like Ohio State can go in there and just apparently take whoever it wants.
Well, I'm 53 years old, and I can't remember. I've known people 20 years. They'll come up to me on the street, and I can't remember their name. I'm having really tough times with memory and whatever, and I'm hanging in. I'm doing the best I can with it. I think what I need to do is write down Steve Sarkisian's name on my wrist, and then that way it's there when Ohio State beats them for another. I mean, Quinn Ewers. Now, obviously, that was a Tom Herman production more than Steve Sarkisian, but I probably need to write his name down on my wrist. That way I can remember who it is, because I'm never going to remember that, because that's not a guy I would associate. Geez, retread? Texas needs a freaking retread? Come on, man. Come on. You got to do somebody in the Texas coach, somebody who worked for Mac Brown somewhere along the way that was there when they won it all, has got to be able to resurrect that thing or something. Good God. Texas. Ugh.
Well, of course, all the talk was they were shooting for Urban Meyer. So they went from Urban Meyer to a 60% winning percentage.
Had who since Pete Carroll? I mean, you're seeing these gigantic, huge name brand programs. It's one of those things that when you fall off the merry-go-round, it's hard to get back on. And, SC has fallen off the merry-go-round. Texas has fallen off the merry-go-round. Michigan has fallen off the merry-go-round.
They're not even at the amusement park. They're not even at the county fair anymore.
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, seeing the situation of where Urban Meyer literally hands the PlayStation controller to Ryan Day, that's the best case scenario there. I mean, granted, we've seen situations of where Butch Davis handed the PS1 controller to Larry Coker, and that didn't go so well.
We just picked up all sorts of folks, so they must have hear you guys howling even through the internet somewhere, through the Ethernet. I don't know what the deal is, but about 150 on the line. So thanks for joining us for Ohio State football talk. But for many of you, you missed most of it, so please wait for the video to post. Should take about 15 minutes. Also consider what I'm pointing at down below even Tony there. PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. And if you enjoy this particular show, put Ohio State, Buckeyes, whatever you want to put on there. Hellwagon, whatever you want to put on there. Make note of that because we want to keep this going. I can't speak for these three because they probably want to be let go at any time. But for this guy, I want to keep this going for as long as possible. And one of the best ways to do that, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, MarkRogersTV, notate for the Ohio State show or for whatever you want to give toward. All right. For Steve Hellwagon, for Kevin Noon, for Tony Gerdeman, you guys are amazing. Appreciate it. We'll see everybody next week.
Sounds good.